Super quick rebuild on an early Sheridan PGP. This is probably a 1985, 1986 model. Knurled pump handle, standard PGP bolt, not the PG converted bolt, which has a knurled end. Has the Sheridan brown grips with the S logo, and I have a couple tools out to take it apart and change some of the pieces. Also has the hole in the bottom of the pump handle, which could retain a BB and a spring, so we'll see about that. Okay, so I have it partially disassembled here, and my pump rod is kind of seized into the hole. So I have a little hammer over here, and I have a pin, and I can just put my pin in here, give it a little tap, and hopefully that'll loosen up the pump rod that's kind of seized in there. So, all right, hit the pump rod with the hammer a couple times, and knocked it a little ways out, and now it's just about ready to be pulled out. There we go. Now it's outside of the hole. The detail we can see here is the actual BB that is retained in the pump handle, and it just locks into this notch on the bottom of the body. So some of the earliest PGPs had that. Now I'm ready to take the bolt out, replace the O-ring, and we'll just take this Allen screw out and pull the bolt out. Oddly enough, this bolt actually had a ball bearing and spring on the top to use as another detent. And when I look at the body, I can see where it's rubbing right there, but hard to see in this light. But I couldn't actually see a notch that it actually is retained into. So it seems kind of pointless, just adds extra friction. So now that I have the bolt out, I'm going to just hit it with some light sandpaper and just kind of get some of the corrosion that's built up on it off, so it'll be a little smoother. So here's what I got apart right now. I got the grip frame, got the pump with the spring and the bearing. I got the bolt out with the spring, the bearing, the two screws, and then we have our front and our back grip frame screw, and we can see our O-ring for our bolt here. Then we have our hammer, our spring, and our back plug, and then we have our top plug, which actually goes in right here, and we have the O-ring taken off of there, and then we have our front 12-gram screw with the aluminum pusher piece and the screw inside. So now we're going to take the valve out. So I got my valve tool in my valve, and I'm going to give it a twist, take the valve out, see how it is. All right, so this hasn't happened to me before. Part of the valve broke off as I was trying to break it free. Let's just get that out now. Just a couple threads off the valve, so it should actually be okay, but man, haven't had that happen before. All right, so there we go. Take that out. We got our cup seal on the end, and our lead seal, and our valve with the broken threads off of it, and there's our cup seal. Now we got our O-ring in there that sits on the face of the valve. So if you look at your valve, your O-ring actually sits right here, and it gets wedged in here after 30 years, 35 years in the case of this PGP. But this one actually came out pretty easy, so just used my needle tool, and there's the O-ring. So it goes right on the front of the valve. That's where it would sit. Although I think I have it reversed right now, because I think the wedged in end would be kind of around the valve. Now with my spent 12 gram, I can just drop it into the front of the PGP. I can use my valve tool right here, kind of bang on the 12 gram. I can tap it lightly with my little hammer if I need to, and that will knock the valve core out of the back of the PGP. If for some reason it sticks and you can't get it knocked out of the back, it's probably because you didn't take this O-ring out of the valve, and you always have to use a needle tool to pick that out. Sometimes it comes out easy, sometimes it's like impossible. But if you feel around with the needle tool in there, you can kind of feel the rubber of the O-ring to kind of get an idea where it is. And it sits on a little lip of the actual valve casing, between the valve casing and the valve. And you just got to pick that out and make sure that's picked out of there. So after a little knocking around, got my core out, and there goes my 12 gram that I used. See the end, it's a little banged up. But let's see, this is the most exciting part. We look at our core and we look at the 12-gram face seal and we see what color it is. If it's white, it's no good. If it's orange, replace it anyways. And it's white, it's turned completely to dust. I guess this is what happens to your PGP face seal, your 12-gram face seal. Seals just like that on your 12-gram. This is what happens to it if it sits in there for 35 years. Turns to dust. Wow. So this piece obviously comes apart. And we can rebuild it now and we can reassemble. So let's see just how bad this 12-gram face seal is. Oh man, just crumbling apart there. So now I have some rubbing alcohol, put a little bit on my Q-tip, and I'm going to just, let's see, where is it? I'm gonna just kind of rub it around in here, kind of clean this out, make sure it's nice for my fresh seal I'm gonna put in. Also gonna take my O-ring off the steel valve casing here. Oh my God, look, it's just like splitting apart, it's so old. It's more like a flat seal than an O-ring. It's just a remnant of what it used to be. Okay, on the top we have our replacement valve, and on the bottom we have our original valve, which the end broke off of, which I hadn't seen before. So it's a fun little thing that happened. All right, we have our valve assembly rebuilt. We can see our new orange face 12-gram seal O-ring. We have a new O-ring on the valve casing. We have a new O-ring on the front of the valve. So now we're ready to put that in the gun, in the PGP. So if there's any takeaway from this video, it's that this is the correct way to load your valve into the PGP. Makes it nice and easy, and you know, it'll go right in. And then you can start threading your valve retaining screw in and you're good to go. Obviously the lead seal is not needed, but in this case I just wanted to throw it back in. All right, now let's put it together. Normally I'd do this standing up, but hard to do with one hand. There we go. Now I can thread it in and I'm good to go. So one of the most important things for having a smooth stroke on a Sheridan is just to make sure you get some oil on that bolt O-ring, and always replace the bolt O-rings, because man, an old bolt O-ring that's even slightly swollen is just going to give you horrible drag on your pump stroke. All right, so as I reassemble here, I just want to illustrate how this ball bearing and spring are added in. So I put them just like that, I push it down, and then I slide the bolt forward. I have to do that two-handed, so just wanted to show this before I did it. All right, got the PGP reassembled, aired up, no leaks, good to go.